So, you want your job?
What are you do?
Me inte. Vi har med hunter. Mer together.
You, hunt together.
Lite mycket.
Indeed, one has always needed many skills to get the right sort of job, and one of the very last steps in this process is the job interview. And this podcast, our final podcast for the semester, will deal with how to prepare for and how to conduct a job interview. First, go in with a strategy. Think about what you want the interview to know about you. Think about what the interview is probably going to find out about you, but you want to minimize and control the information that the interviewer receives, and research what you need to know about the job and the organization. These are all extremely important points to remember. You are constructing a narrative around yourself when you have a job interview. You have the ability to present information the way that you want it presented, but the interviewer will also have an expectation that you've done some homework, that you've done some research. I tend to interview almost everybody who is hired in a faculty position at Newman University, and I rarely even consider candidates who do not appear to have read our website and read some of our main important governing documents, because that information is available, and I, as a job interviewer, want to know that somebody cares enough about this position to have actually done some research and found out whether or not they would make a good match for the position. You can't sweat the details too much when you're going to a job interview. Make sure you wear something that's conservative, unless you absolutely know that something else is going to be appropriate. I've had a number of job interviews with people who have come in dressed very casually, and it's always hurt them. What do you bring to the interview? Bring extra copies of your resume. There may be other people there to meet you. And for a lot of jobs, people are going to want a writing sample as well. So if it's that sort of job, or if you think it might be, bring some kind of a writing sample. And what do you write down as you take notes? The name of the interviewer, and then send the interviewer a thank you card when you're done. Everybody who was involved in the interview, not an email, a handwritten thank you note. On more than one occasion, that has made the difference with me between somebody getting a job and somebody not getting a job. Write down how you seem to have impacted the interviewer. Write down any answers to questions that you have, and then write down whatever timeline they give you as to when you will hear. It's important in an interview to be yourself, but it's important to be your best self. You don't want to volunteer highly negative information, for example, unless you think that it's going to come out anyway and you want to put it in the best light. Here are some questions that are commonly asked in job interviews that you want to be prepared for. What makes you think you're qualified to work for this company? And to do this, you want to know not only your own qualifications, but you want to know about the company, what their mission, what their values are, and also the kind of job that you're applying for. So highlight both your experience and your skill set here and pair them with what you know about the company. What 2 or 3 accomplishments have given you the most satisfaction? This is where you talk about what makes you tick. I recently completed a round of interviews for a theater professor here at Newman, and one of the questions that I always asked the candidates was, what was your favorite show to direct that you've directed in the past? One of the candidates told me it was Shakespeare's Othello. One of them told me it was the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Huge difference between those two that told me a lot about the candidates. Why do you want to work for us? Or why do you think that our company, with our mission and our values and our vision, would be a good match for who you are? What college courses did you like the best or like the least? And this is a way of trying to figure out who you are, what makes you tick. One of my colleagues at Newman always asks job candidates, what's the last book you read? What's the last movie you saw? And then has a conversation that's geared to try to figure out who the candidate is as a person. And then, if you have low grades on your transcript, what happened? Why do you have such low grades? Explain these parts of your public record that don't paint you in a favorable light. This is a great opportunity for you to put possibly, potentially negative information in your own narrative in a way that makes you look as good as possible. A few more common questions. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? This is a way of asking, where are you going? What direction are you headed in? What do you plan to do? Are you going to come here and work your way up through our company? Do you imagine yourself in this career, in this field? And what ambitions do you have for the future? What are your interests outside of work? This is a good chance to explain who you are and what is important to you. Family and children are always a good answer here. Going out and shooting things on the weekend may or may not be a good answer depending on who you're talking with. But this is a chance for you to present yourself as a person as well as a job candidate. What have you done to learn about this company? We've already talked about the importance of researching a company. Most companies now put a whole lot of information about themselves on the internet at some expense to themselves. They want to know that you're paying attention. Finally, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? This weaknesses question drives me crazy. I never ask it. I think it's a silly question. But a lot of people ask it, and I've certainly been asked it myself, both in my own job interviews and in references that I give for other people. The trick here is to find something that is a real weakness. You don't want to say, I just love people too much. But it's not too scandalous, like I like to steal from my employers at gunpoint. Somewhere in between there's a weakness that represents a real part of your character that shows that you're humble enough to recognize it, but that also shows that it's a weakness that they can work with. What I'd like to do on this final slide is show you a brief, about a 5-minute movie presentation that was made about the job interview process, and have you look at that and take down notes on what's most important.
I'm Don Varney of Varney Speaks, and on behalf of Expert Village, today we're going to talk about the interview process. All right, let's take a moment and talk about some of the types of questions that you could be asked during the interview process. And sometimes the questions are misleading because we're taking them personally when they're really talking professionally. A good example would be if they were to say to you, tell me about yourself. You're sitting there saying, well, you know, I like to go hunting on the weekends and like to go camping, take my family fishing, and I really enjoy that. Well, great answer, but that's not what they're asking. When they say, tell me about yourself, they are asking you to tell them about yourself in this job environment. They want to hear that, you know, I enjoy coming to work with people that I get around and I have a good time with. I like an atmosphere of friendliness. Your company being a company that specializes in public relations and customer service, well, this is the environment that I like. And it would work well for me to work well in your environment. That would be more in line with what they're really asking when they say, tell me about yourself. When they ask about strengths and weaknesses, again, they're not asking for you to really tell them, well, I'm very good at this and I'm weak at this. But in essence, they may be asking you about how that would apply to the workforce, to the workplace, where you are actually going to go to work. One of the simplest examples is you might say, you know, I was told early on in my career that listening was a weakness, that I didn't listen very well because I was always like ready to answer whatever it was they were saying. Well, the good news was they were right, and I figured that out. So what I've done now is I've taken a weakness of not listening very well. I've taken classes on it, I read books on it, I've done studies on it, and over the last few years what I've really determined is I really wasn't a good listener, but now I've really trained myself to understand the importance of listening to the person in front of me before I try to answer.